All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The minutes are approved. Robin is in North Carolina, and she has made a deal with her family that this will only last an hour. Pastor Jackson also is under the impression it will last an hour. So we'd like to try and hurry through things as best we can. And in order to do that, I would kind of like to take items out of order. I'd like to begin with the item that deals with the quorum and find out, I've had a number of people, several people, ask me, can we reconsider what we did on that item? And does anyone object to us reconsidering the item dealing with quorum?
Mr. Chairman, the only reason that I say this is because in these sorts of meetings, when you go through something and you make a decision on something, that's a decision. And now for us to reopen that, I'm wondering why, and I'm wondering how much more we want to reopen. This was discussed at some length the last time that we went through this, and there was a vote, and that vote was registered, and I don't remember even candidly. I think we stuck with what we had, but with that in mind, I don't support us going back and reconsidering, just because, as I said, we had a quorum in the last meeting, we had a vote, the vote was what it was, and it's done. And that's typically how you would go through these sorts of things in this kind of a commission.
Reconsider it. I was going to ask, is there a motion? There's a motion made and a second to reconsider. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no.
No.
I think the ayes have it. So let's reconsider Proposition 5. There are, in people that have talked to me, there are two approaches mentioned so far. And in front of you is a draft of those two proposals. The first one changes the number of members necessary for a quorum under the Open Meetings Act to be 3, and all business of the council can only be done with a quorum of 4. The second proposal increases the size of the council by 1 member, instead of 5, making it 6. So those are the two proposals that I've heard so far. Are there any other proposals? Let me start with that. Are there any other proposals on how to respond to the concern about the quorum being 3? No other proposals? Well, let's then consider these two.
Discussion? Or?
Yeah, no, we're gonna discuss it. Let me state what I understand to be the complaint, and whoever wants to chime in, please do. I'm sorry about that, I thought I had turned it off. My understanding is that on the council with 5, 3 people are the majority, they can vote and pass anything. Therefore, theoretically, it is entirely possible that 3 members of the council can have a private discussion off the dais, outside, decide what they're going to do, why they're going to do it, all of that, come back in, and then vote as a three people and enact whatever they choose. That my understanding is the problem, and that would avoid any public discussion. That has not been what's happened, but that's the concern. At least I understand that's what. So that's my understanding of what the perceived problem is. Mr. Crouch.
I understand what the perception is with that, and I just kind of wanted to speak concerning the option of adding another council member.
Is your mic on? Is Robin?
I think they're all on. I think they're staying on.
Maybe I just need to get closer. Yeah, it was on. So the conversations I've had as far as the issue and the solution for the issue has kind of stemmed around that that proposition is adding another council member. And the reason I feel that it may be beneficial is because, one, the city of Bastrop is growing at a tremendous rate. And at some point in time, maybe we need another council person to add to the mix. The argument that started, if you add one more council person, then you have 6 people, and you have potential ties, more likelihood of potential ties. And the way around that is the mayor voting. And we kind of talked about last time that the mayor just very seldom votes, if at all. But there's going to be more and more of a likelihood of ties in this day and age, I think, if you have 3 and 3 potential. If the mayor votes, then his vote would actually mean something. And you would get something out of the mayor's vote, maybe make people think about who you're voting for mayor, knowing that they're going to be voting on things. So I see a positive with that. I see a positive with adding an extra member with the population of Bastrop growing, and I think that's a good, or could be a good solution to the quorum problem that everybody's been talking about. So I'd support the adding a council member.
Could I ask the benefit of that over, could I ask the benefit of that over the other proposition? What's the pro, please? Anybody, I open to anybody.
Yeah. David, you
Well,
want to go through what we talked about?
Under Mr. Crouch's proposal, there's no need to change the quorum. Quorum would remain at 4, but it would solve this concern by requiring that before a group who could vote to pass things could do so, they had to have a public discussion. I think and it's simpler in the sense that with the other proposal, you have 2 different quorums, one for open meeting purposes and then one for the actual conducting of business. What's conducting business? That's kind of an undefined term. So those are I think the 2 differences. One is actually simpler than the other.
David, can I ask you a question? You said that the quorum would remain the same, and I understand 4 is the majority of 7, but 4 would also be a voting block. So you're saying that it would remain at 4, but 3 people could still get together because they're not a voting block.
That's right.
Mr. Chair, I was on the last Charter Review Commission, and we discussed this. And I think what we're missing sometimes is that the 4 for a quorum is meant to be to enable you to gavel a meeting to order. There must be 4 members of the council present. As soon as a meeting is gavelled to order, then there becomes only 3 members that can vote. Because one person, whether it's the mayor or another council member, correct me if I'm wrong, please, sir, somebody has to conduct a meeting, and according to our bylaws, they do not vote. So then we have the 3 members would make a quorum. The 4 only was meant for being able to call a meeting to order. We felt that was a greater protection for the citizens of this state, of this city. And I wouldn't want 3 members being able to get together and call a meeting to order and then only have 2 to conduct business. That just doesn't make sense.
So could I ask a quick question? Ms. Moore,
That's okay, I'll wait.
oh, I'm sorry, and go ahead. I'm not paying attention. Please, go ahead.
Doc?
I was one of the people that talked to you about, doing this, and I'm in favor of increasing the size of the council to 7. I think we're a large enough city that increasing the council to 7 and then having the 4 as the majority would work. I've talked to several people in the community about it, and since they know that I'm on this committee, and they were seemingly in agreement as well. I think that it would just be clearer, and it would also give the mayor a chance, the opportunity to vote and include that person, whoever the mayor may be at the time, to vote. And so that's why I would propose that as well. I was real confused when we went through it, and I was on the council for years, and we didn't really practice that. I couldn't talk to that many more people and still come to the meeting. But what I think will clear this all up, and it'll also open up the door for future mayors to be able to vote, would be to have 7. And so I would be much clearer about that, and I understand that much better. And I think the citizens would appreciate that as well.
Now, the proposal by Mr. Kraus does not include giving the mayor the authority to vote in every issue, only when there's a tie. Is yours expanding that?
Mine's expanding that, yes, to allow the mayor to vote also in those situations.
Let's take that up separately if we could.
Well, that's, okay, that was what I was trying to propose at the very beginning.
We've got one here. Let me do it. Mr. Kraus, you want to move that we amend section 3.02 to increase the size of the council to 7 by adding 1 council member?
The mayor is actually a part of the city council, and so therefore, you would have a city council of 7.
That's what I just said.
I mean, no, I'm just saying that he or she is a member of the city council. So when you're considering the council, you need to consider the mayor as a part of the council, even if non-voting, except on special occasions.
And I agree with that, with having 6 council members, 7 adding the mayor to that group of people. I'm for the mayor not voting unless it's a tie. I think my perspective is the mayor should be neutral. There should be one neutral person amongst the group. And so if you're voting every time, then you're apt to public scrutiny over what you're voting for. If the mayor doesn't vote except on a tie, then he can be the mayor.
Or she.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I didn't explain it very well, but.
Well, it makes sense to you, I mean, obviously, because you made the motion to do that, but I think that the mayor should have a voice in the situations with the city, and I think that that's, if they're going to be 7 council members, the member of the city council is 7, and if we add 1, it will be 7, because the mayor is part of that. I think that that person should be able to vote.
Do you want to make a motion for your proposal that you amend section 3.02 to increase the size of the city council to 7 by adding 1 council member?
And I would elaborate on that to the voting of the mayor piece on there, that he doesn't vote unless there's a tie.
For me, it feels like the apt,
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
There's a second. Mr. Kirby seconds the motion. Anyone want to discuss that motion?
Chris wants to go.
I think that it's my understanding of the nature, sort of the overarching philosophy of the city's charter, is that the mayor has certain limited power. The appointment of the nomination, I should say, of various commissions or membership on various boards, things like that, and that we as a city had made some decision at some time past to really seat the nexus of the power to control the city and direct the city to the city council. I hate the term, but it's sort of a weak mayor system. If you, under the proposal that's in front of us right now, since we're reconsidering, it would maintain that philosophy, that the 6 council members, essentially, if you're moving it from 5 to 6, would then be guiding and directing the city, with the mayor, appointing a lot of or nominating, I should say, a lot of commissioners, subject to the approval of the city council for whether it's the library board or whatever, board members and such. If you expand the vote of the mayor to be included in all votes, then from my thumbnail analysis right now, you're shifting away from that fundamental philosophy that apparently Bastrop has functioned under for quite some time, from the core of decision making and and driving the direction of the city, being the council, council and the mayor being that neutral party in the middle, to now giving the mayor much more of the ability to guide and direct not only the appointment of board members on various things, but also the direction of the city. If we are trying to be a representative body, then it strikes me that the best representation would be that of city council members representing the city, the mayor driving or sort of directing from the leadership position on the dais, and voting only on ties.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, please. Several things. Jimmy, I think what I worry about is that, Doc may be feeling the pulse of the community better than I, but I'm a little worried that we're going to have to get this past the city council and past the voters. And I'm worried that it's, if we phrase this the other way, which is a technical fix, we've got several technical fixes that we're proposing. It becomes really a technical fix. But if we add a council member, if we talk about the mayor voting or not, it makes it a little more, I think, politically volatile. And I want to make sure this thing passes, because I think that the council members in the past have had a different understanding than some of us for 20 years before about whether three people can get together or not. And so I want to find the easiest way to fix this. I think what you're talking about would fix it. I'm just worried, is it as likely to pass as a technical fix as David proposed?
So you're concerned with the wording of it more than?
No, I'm worried about people saying, why in the world do they want to add a council member? And why are they letting the mayor vote? And are they trying to get more money, or what are they trying to do? I mean, that's the kind of, but if it's just a technical fix, they're going to say, okay, let's technically fix it.
Yeah, because I don't think that you would really need to even bring up the mayoral voting piece of it, because they don't vote now unless there's a tie.
Well, I'll take that away and say, why are they adding a council member? What are they up to?
I
That's
think
the
it'd be
kind of
good to
stuff
be
people
clear.
think.
I think you should be clear about it, because people are going to wonder.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I agree.
I don't think you should leave it out. It honestly doesn't seem simpler. I haven't even formed my opinion yet, but it doesn't seem simpler. It seems 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, plus some more questions that we didn't have with the other issue, to me.
Yeah, I think with the growth of Bastrop, that it wouldn't hurt the Bastrop to have 6 council members.
And I'm not arguing that. I'm arguing, can it pass?
Yeah, I get it.
And you think the other proposition would have an easier time passing?
I believe it would be as easy as the other things we proposed, which are really technical fixes that were proposed by the city manager and maybe others.
I'd like to agree with Doc. The folks that I've talked to, really interestingly, with really different backgrounds, have always assumed that a voting block would only discuss city business in city council chambers. And that's the discussion. And I completely agree with Mayor Kessler that if we start talking about adding a council member, mayor voting, mayor not voting, we're completely dodging the conversation of, for I guess it's been 20 years, it was well known that a voting block shouldn't be meeting in private. And now it's become a discussion of should that be happening or should that not be happening. And to your point, I think we muddy the waters if we start introducing other ways of fixing that conversation. The folks that I talked to assumed it would not happen and were quite disappointed that our charter allowed it to happen and didn't think it was happening in the past. So we're back to Ken's point. It's a technical fix on how things have been working for many, many years. Would you agree with that, Ken?
Any more discussion?
The other night, among others, I heard some folks speaking about the danger of changing this, how dangerous it could be, and it just doesn't track. I wouldn't mind some it's a word that was used about not leaving it as it is. And I just don't understand the danger part of it. If anybody has some insight on that, it would help me understand the issue better. I want to clarify that I personally, I won't speak about who else has spoken with anybody. I personally spoke with a board member of the Bastrop ISD and Smithville ISD, and they both said that they way overshoot this. They don't speak with anybody, not one person outside. Those are just the two people I spoke with, so I don't know what the norm is, but those two people said, and things seem to run swimmingly. There don't seem to be any dangers or issues that they can discuss with me about how they operate. And so that's what I'm not, like, what's the danger? What's the, yeah, anybody on the other side of that issue?
Yeah, my experience with it, and I can just speak from when I was on council. So when I was on council, the rule was that you could speak to two other council members. And Alan clarified several times now that that's not illegal, that you could do that, and nobody ever told me any different than that. So I always, if I needed some guidance or some other thoughts on an item, I knew I could talk to two other people. Did I do that all the time? No, I didn't. And I would select, and Ken, when I said this the last meeting, Ken said, I can't believe you said that you did that. But I did. And because we asked if we could do that, and they said yes, so we did that. I could talk to two other council members.
May I ask?
I wonder if the city attorney could try to explain about the spirit and the letter of the law and the Open Meetings Act and all that. Would that help Alex figure this out a little better? And maybe the rest of us?
Don't know if it'll help, but I'll be glad to try. The Open Meetings Act was adopted in the 70s. The legislature made the policy decision that it wasn't enough for citizens to see the votes on city council, school board, county commissioners, that the public, in order to participate in the democratic process, had to see the sausage being made, the back and forth, give and take, horse trading that goes on, and was mainly going on behind closed doors in the back hallways of government. So they passed the Open Meetings Act, recognizing that in Texas, cities have long acted through their city councils, and city councils act at meetings. So while undefined in our charter, the term "to do business," I think means have meetings. Why? Because council members don't legally have any authority to do anything other than meet. That's what state law is set up for them to do. Come to meeting, talk, listen, and vote. So the Open Meetings Act was adopted, and the magic number is the quorum, whatever a quorum is for a particular governing body. Normally, that's a simple majority of those who vote on all matters or eligible to vote on all matters before the body. So normally, if you had 5 voting members, a quorum would be 3. If you were a general law city like Smithville, well, it's 3 to have a regular meeting, but the statute says it's 4, a supermajority, to have a special meeting. So depending on what kind of entity you are and where you are, there might be a different quorum requirement. So the Open Meetings Act says if you've got a quorum talking about public business, that is a meeting, wherever it happens to be, whenever it happens to take place, and therefore you have to do 3 things. You have to post an agenda 72 hours in advance, you have to let the public come watch, listen, and speak, and you have to keep minutes of your meeting. So a meeting itself is defined by a quorum. Wherever a quorum occurs, they're talking about public business, that is a meeting. The other time a quorum comes up in the Open Meetings Act is in section 143, which we often refer to as walking quorum or daisy chain. And it says if council members in this context, P&Z members perhaps, if a quorum is talking about public business outside of a public meeting, then that is a violation of the Open Meetings Act, and that is a crime. That could be one member talking to another member, talking to another member. It could be them emailing each other, texting each other. It could be, I think, going on social media together. And so the quorum is the magic number. Here in Bastrop, our charter says a quorum is 4. So yes, a couple years ago when I was asked, does that mean that 3 can get together and talk outside of a meeting? That is the answer. That's less than a quorum. And so I stand by what I've said, that I think it's legal to do that. Whether, from a policy standpoint, it's the right thing to do, I'll leave it to y'all and the city council and the voters to decide. But currently in Bastrop, it's legal for 3 council members to get together and talk outside of a meeting without violating the Open Meetings Act.
I tell you, it strikes me that thank you, Alan, for your explanation, but, I mean, forgive me, but it sounds to me like the issue is that people, whether within or without this group, are concerned about a couple of folks sitting around and talking about business, or talking about anything. And when you start talking about a daisy chain, it's even more disconcerting to me, because we have, in Bastrop, we have this tendency, at least by some, to assume the worst out of everybody's interactions. And if violations of the Open Meetings Act, I assume, are subject to some sort of sanction, then we're stepping into a world of infinite possibilities. So if Joe and David and I are on the city council and I'm talking to Joe about something, and then the next day I see David at lunch and he and I talk about the same thing, now it's a daisy chain. We've just violated the Open Meetings Act. It's my understanding. And then if we're now subject to God knows who coming and filling this room and telling us about how we're such terrible actors. I really wish that we had an assumption here that our public servants were doing this with the best of intentions and trying their very best to govern this city in the way that it's supposed to be.
Well, Mr.
It
Crouch-
feels as if, in just one second, it feels as if the thrust of this is an assumption of nefarious intent on some meetings that I'll be honest with you, I don't know what y'all are talking about. But we may be throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
I'm sorry, I just want to say that you mentioned a phrase that you used a moment ago.
Reverend Jackson, I
I'm so
think.
sorry.
And just for the side, don't worry about the time, don't rush and watch the clock for me. But I think that sitting here, I feel a responsibility to speak a truth here. And one of these things that we're sitting at this table and discussing this about is the transparency that citizens are asking for. Some say that we've been told that we can speak and have these discussions. What the citizens are seeing, and the ones that are speaking to me are saying, is that they're having these discussions and then they come in and they vote in a block vote. And that's what's bothering the citizens. You've already made a decision about city business outside of the meeting. You've made up your mind. I didn't get to hear any discussion at the city council meeting. You already know what you're going to do. And I've said this to council members. You have the appearance on the diocese that you're not listening to anything that anyone says. You already know what you're going to do. And you've got a block and you get it done. And all of us around this table know that in the last year, we've heard about that block. We've talked about it. So we're acting here now in 2024 about what is happening in 2024. And so I guess we're trying to rectify it. Or at least acknowledge that some people believe that is happening. That there are discussions outside about city business and the vote comes in and it's being voted on because of those discussions. Joe.
Yeah, to my knowledge, that never happened while I was on council.
Didn't you tell us at the last meeting that you did that?
I'm going into that one right now.
Didn't you tell us at the last meeting that you would talk to 2 people?
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I would talk to 2 people, but we didn't form a voting block and say, okay, based on that conversation, we all had the same
So, Mayor,
agreement
I
and
just
the
want to say,
same-
you
the
said
same
some,
vote.
you
Yeah.
said some words a few minutes ago, earlier on, about apt for public scrutiny. And that was in regard to the mayor voting, whether it could bring up some issues and it could be apt for public scrutiny. That is the issue here. It's not about mistrust that I've ever heard. It's just, we just want to be aware of what's happening is what I'm hearing. And it doesn't make sense why it would track for the mayor issue of what you spoke about and not for this issue. It's just the public scrutiny. The public should be able to scrutinize these. That's the issue. Why anybody? And the thing is it works. It works in other organizations. They don't abuse this, or however you want to put it. I didn't mean any negative connotation. They don't they go backwards. Like I said, they meet fewer people than they're allowed, daisy chain or otherwise, and things seem to work smoothly. It just doesn't make sense, the danger or what the issue is and why it's okay to not be apt for public scrutiny here and not on this other side.
Let me get things back on track. The motion that's on the floor is whether to increase the size of the city council by adding one new council member. Are y'all ready to vote on that particular
Yes.
motion?
Can I ask you a question? We've got two things we're talking about, I think, and if this one how do I want to say this? No, I won't say it, never mind.
The mayor voting would be sway your decision.
No, this is about the two proposals, like, we can't vote on them all at once, so we've got to do one at a time, and
That's right. All right, so, no further discussion. Let's try.
Procedural question, Mr. Chair. I don't know, since we are complying with the Open Meetings Act, are we allowing public comment as you go or at the end? I have no opinion on that. I just wanted to ask that question.
I was going to have public comment in order to try and get off before Robin has to leave our meeting at 1 o'clock. I was going to do that, but I understand what you're saying.
I have no opinion, just a question.
Yeah. All those, let's try a voice vote.
Can we,
What?
I'm persuaded by, just one person, I'm persuaded by what Alan said, that, do we, do we have, I mean, at council meetings, at least people can sign up to talk about issues as they go. I mean, the public comments are stuff that's not on the agenda, but this is on the agenda. And I'm wondering if we wouldn't benefit ourselves by taking, I know Robin's in a hurry, I know that's a problem, but there may be people here that would say something that would persuade some of us in a certain direction.
Well, let me open it then to citizen comment. Is there anyone here who wants to speak in favor, let me start with that, in favor of increasing the size of the council by adding one city council member? No one appears to be, anyone wants to speak against that?
I went online.
Could you come up to one of the microphones, Marie, so she can hear?
Well, people online will be able to hear you, though.
Okay. So, it's a.
I don't think it's on.
Okay. Hello?
Could you state your name, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. My name is Marie Blazik, and I went online and I traveled around sort of small to medium-sized Texas towns to see how many city council members they had. And you might have done the same thing. Anyway, and there's quite a bit of variation, and 5's pretty common. And of course, Austin has 10, but it's a big booming city now. And there did seem to be, quite a bit of variation in the size. 5 was the most common, but then some had 6, some had 7. And it's, because we are a larger community, it just makes sense to have more council members. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I lost the connection for a few minutes, so I'm not sure, and then I removed it so I could connect you. There was a motion on the floor regarding the council, adding a council member. Did somebody just tell me and please?
That is the motion that's on the floor. We just had a citizen comment in favor of increasing the size of the council.
With the mayor not voting.
The mayor, yeah, the mayor.
Leaving it alone.
Yeah.
Well, the motion would just be to add a council person.
That's
And that's
correct.
it.
All right, so let's try a voice vote and see what happens. All those in favor of adding a council member, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed to adding a council member, say no.
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 I believe the ayes have it.
Can you show of hands quick?
Let's go ahead, the show of hands has been requested. All those in favor of adding a council member? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And I believe Robin had given an aye as well.
And Robin, are you voting aye?
I was an aye, correct.
Okay, so that's 6. And we need 10, and so that motion fails. Is there a motion now for the alternative, which is to have 3 voting members constitute a quorum under the Open Meetings Act but 4 required to conduct business.
So moved.
Second.
Mayor Kessler has moved that we adopt that, and Mayor,
Mr. Chair, so we're not going to consider my other motion that was preceded by this one?
they are in order, we're going in the order we've
okay.
got here. Mayor Schrader seconded, I believe, the motion. Is there any discussion of amending section 3.3 of the charter to have 3 council members constitute a quorum, but 4 required to conduct business? No discussion?
If somebody could explain how that impacts the issue that's been brought up, like Ms. Jackson was talking about. I'm not sure I understand really how this impacts the perceived voting block that's talking, or whatever's going on.
Could we get a ruling, could we get a ruling from the city attorney about how it would work and if it would fix what we're talking about?
What's different?
How does this technically fix it, is I think what John's asking.
The amendment to 313 or the amendment to 302?
313.
313.
Because the motion said 3.
We voted down, or the
It didn't pass.
302 did not pass. Now we're
So they
considering
jumped over to
313.
313.
Our attorney's
My
confused. We're
intention
in
was
trouble.
to move 313 on proposed amendment dealing with quorum.
The way it does it, as I understand it, is it prevents a situation where you have 3 members of the council who can vote on and pass anything, conferring secretly and privately outside council chambers, coming in and then voting. The question was raised about whether you can then have 3 be a quorum for the meeting and then 2 pass, and the answer to that is no. That's why the 4 members of the quorum are required to conduct business. So you have the protection against that, and the 3 brings in the Open Meetings Act to keep people from talking privately, secretly outside.
David, I've got a question for Alan. You said that when the Open Meetings Act was passed, the quorum was the litmus test of how many people could, talk to each other outside of council chambers. Are we even able to bifurcate the number of people needed to do business, which is a quorum to my understanding, and at the same time limit to some lower number the number of people who could discuss it outside of council?
Certainly. Good question, Mr. Tuck. I think the answer is yes. So what this is doing, this proposed amendment to 313 that we were handed today, is it says that a quorum is 3 for purposes of conducting a meeting. A meeting is discussing, a meeting is listening, a meeting is considering, a meeting is talking to staff as a group. But then it goes on to say that in order to actually adopt any ordinance or resolution, you have to have a majority of the 4 being present. So it has a heightened quorum. It provides 2 quorums, one to convene a meeting and one to take action at the meeting.
Can the city council change the statutory definition?
I think the voters by charter can set the definition
Okay.
of quorum, which is what they did in Bastrop. That's why we have a quorum of 4. That's not state law. That's what the voters of Bastrop chose at some point.
I talked to a leading legal scholar in Texas whose comment was, we have a real quirk, a real problem with our charter because it does what this is. And that the intention is to make sure that we can't have a majority of the voting members meet outside. That's all it is.
That's it.
And if this fixes it, Alan, if this fixes it, then I think it's the easiest way to do it. And I'm desperately asking if you think this fixes it.
I do think it fixes it. I think it's a fix. It's novel. I hadn't seen this before. It looks similar to what the city council discussed, 2 meetings ago on its own self-imposed rules of procedure. Even if the quorum stayed the same, it said that a group of 3 or more can't talk about things outside of a meeting. That was not successful at the city council meeting. this puts it before the voters to do something similar.
Thank you very much.
All right, any further discussion?
We heard from a large number of citizens at the last council meeting whom I believe want this fixed. Whether they don't trust, they do trust, I don't know why they want it. You have to ask them. Maybe they want some extra security. So the voters of this town that have been here and have addressed the council, I believe, would support this fix.
Any further discussion? Let's go ahead and,
Well, go ahead, Mayor. Go ahead. No, I'll defer to you.
I was just going to mention that I contacted the Freedom of Information Foundation and spoke with James Hemphill, who is an attorney that works for that organization, and he confirmed that the Open Meetings Act defines a quorum, and the quorum is the majority, but that home rule cities can further define that quorum, and he always encourages them to do so, and that a meeting is any time city business is discussed. And when I explained, well, you know, we have 6 on council. Doc, as you mentioned, the mayor's always been a member of the council. Yes. So the council is 6, the majority would be 4, but with the mayor not voting, a voting block is 3. And Mr. Hemphill's recommendation was that it was certainly very dangerous territory, flew in the face of the intention of the Open Meetings Act, and referred me back to even the Open Meetings Act from the Attorney General's cover letter talks about public business being discussed in public. It's not a nefarious conversation, it's that the public wants to hear that conversation. It may keep just inform people. If there's city council people who are well aware of what's going on with city business, if they have questions, it's very often that the citizens have the same sort of questions. So if they can hear that question asked and answered and discussed, it's just a matter of transparency.
and if I could respond further to Joe's question, in the Open Meetings Act, quorum means, this is definition in the statute, means a majority of governmental body unless defined differently by applicable law or rule or the charter of the governing body. So we specifically have legal authority to set the quorum however we wish.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, I mean, I've never, you know, I was on the council for quite some time, and I never understood it to be 3 people as a quorum. I mean, I really never did. I never talked to more than one person because I didn't want to go. I was too afraid, of course, of the complications and things that would happen otherwise. But I mean, it probably happened, but I did not do that. And so I was very surprised to hear that that had been happening, although I guess I knew it was happening, but I just turned a different ear to it. So I think it's dangerous because of the precedent that it will set if we put this in motion. So it's still confusing to me how we're putting this together, because I've got it in front of me here and I've been trying to read it, but I'll just go along and see how the vote turns out, and be happy with that, since the voters will make the final determination.
But Doc, if you need more information, I mean, could Alan provide something better for you? I mean, I think he's done a pretty good job, but.
No, he's done a good job. I mean, I'm seeing this. I was just, once we start discussing it, it seems like it changes a little bit, or it gets confusing to me, but, and that's what the citizens were asking also, and I said, that's why I wanted to bring it back so we could discuss it further, because I was confused last time too, the way we discussed it, because there were 2 different situations. One was the quorum for the meetings, and the other was the quorum for discussions, and I feel like they should be the same.
And if I may, Mr. Jackson and Mr. Bragg, Chairman Bragg, I'm reading this amendment again, and I'm going to modify my first response. I just think this leaves a quorum for all meetings at 4, whether there's action or not. Talking, listening, voting on an ordinance, voting on a resolution. The quorum is 4 because of the first sentence and because of the third sentence. Second sentence and fourth sentence. The one in the middle only sets a quorum specifically for the purposes of the Open Meetings Act, which really means walking quorum. So you have a quorum for conducting all business, which is 4, and then you have a quorum for purposes of walking quorum, which is 3. That's what I think this does. And so back to your question earlier, I do think this addresses the issue you've been talking about. It does it by setting 2 quorums.
Thank you.
Are you suggesting that sentences maybe be rearranged? Or you're, okay, I just want, if we're voting on something, I want us to be clear on the verbiage.
Make sure the city attorney can check off on it.
Well, I think we could wordsmith it. I don't, I could sit here and type, but I don't want to take people's time to do that. I just wanted to be clear that that's what I think this does. All meetings will continue as they do today. You have to have 4, even if it's just to sit and listen to a public hearing and you take no action. It's 4, as it is today. To approve an ordinance or a resolution, it's got to be a majority of at least 4, as it is today. But it says for other purposes under the Open Meetings Act, the quorum is 3. The only purpose that comes to mind is the walking quorum daisy chain prohibition in section 143 of the statute.
Any further questions?
I don't have a question, but I'd just like to state that I think this is much ado about nothing. The people that are such avid proponents of this are suggesting that there's some kind of smoke-filled room where 3 people go and conjure up a voting block and come out and vote it, and that's just not the case. What we've got here, if everybody here has sat through one of these interminable city council meetings. I know when the mayor was congratulating Ann Franklin, she apologized for meetings that go into the midnight and past. I mean, I can't even sit through them, and I'm interested. And I watch them on my computer these days because I can't. These things are too long. You can't really have a discussion that council members. I know that they can better understand and discuss the merits of proposals if they can talk among themselves. And this is nothing more than a limit on how they can do that. Now, are we going to have now add another spot on the dais and everybody has to discuss the merits in front of the entire assemblage, but you're going to go home, get burned out and go home? This limits the ability of the council members, in my judgment, to adequately discuss things.
It's called open government.
You know, I mean, this is over-regulation, and it's a solution to a problem that doesn't exist.
Robin, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just keenly aware of my time limit, and I know I'm hearing a lot of comments that sound similar to what's already been said. I think this clarification is very helpful to me, and I'm wondering, I'm not sure what the correct procedure is, if I can call for a vote, or if we can move forward to voting. Is that inappropriate?
Robin has just called the question, and so let's take a vote by hands to start with, see how that works. All those in favor of the amendment before you on section 3.13 of the charter, please raise your hand. I get 10. Could somebody else count to make sure?
Robin?
Oh, 11, okay. I believe we have 11 votes, therefore the proposition passes.
Can I have a moment on a personal thing?
Sorry about the answer.
Robin, thank you very much. I know if you have to leave, I understand.
Do you want us to hold our hands up again, Ann?
Yeah.
It's 11?
Robin has her hand up.
I did.
Okay. Kirby and Tuck were no. No, Kirby and Tuck. Everybody else. Yeah.
11 to 2.
Okay.
Can I make a comment that's personal?
I don't know, can you?
I mean, will you let me? I just wanted to say to Joe, unless you're a mind reader, you don't know that we're thinking anything nefarious is going on. I think what we're trying to do is to comply with the state law. I mean, I think that's unfair of you to say that.
It's actually been explained, it's already been explained that it's just for transparency. That was the explanation I heard. That made sense.
It's called watching the sausage being made. Sometimes it ain't pretty, but when it's out in the open, everybody knows how it's made.
Let's move on to the second item. And on my list of things, we have Proposition 1, or I rather, not 1, Proposition I. I am confused by what happened, and I believe Mayor Schrader is too. We had a vote and Proposition I was defeated. That's on the minutes. If you're looking at the minutes, it's on page 2.
Before we get started, I lost a little bit. What was the outcome of the last vote?
11 to 2.
Approving.
Approving.
Okay, great. I'm gonna, let's see, I think I'm gonna have to sign off now. I apologize for how challenging it has been. I appreciate everybody's accommodations to include my vote. Since I don't think I'll have a chance to meet with everybody again, I enjoyed working with you all, even if it was remotely.
Thank your family for loaning you to us.
Robin. Thank you.
Bye-bye. You're welcome.
If y'all have Proposition I in front of you, or we had a vote on it and it was defeated, Proposition I, and the proposition was to have the Planning and Zoning Commission number of commissioners be fixed by the city council. That was the proposition. That was defeated on a motion. All right, then Mayor Kessler made a motion to reject Proposition I, which actually we had just done by failing to achieve the number of votes to pass it. And then that motion was approved 8 to 2 to 2, and we needed 10 to pass a motion. So I'm confused about what we did. I think we defeated it, but I was wondering, can we have a straight up and down vote on Proposition I again, and to see whether it does or does not fail? Again, Proposition I is to allow the city council to determine the number of members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. That's the proposition.
And so if 10 of us vote for that, it goes to the council to decide whether to present to the city.
That's right. If less than 10 vote, it doesn't go anywhere.
Okay.
Everybody understand?
No, that confused things.
I would like.
Depends on how the motion is, right?
Well, the motion is to approve this proposition. I'm sorry, the motion already was made. I guess we should go ahead.
Because I thought the motion that Ken made was to leave it the way it is.
Yeah, I might have wanted to make sure, who knows, I might have been confused as usual, but I think what I meant to do was to make absolutely certain that we did not want it.
So the way I interpreted your vote last time, commissioners, is there was a motion to approve it, that failed.
Right.
There was a motion to reject it, that failed. Had the motion to reject passed, I would have interpreted that as you are making a recommendation to the city council that they not change the charter. That's how I would interpret it. If you want to be more explicit and take out any ambiguity, you may want to word the motion that way. What message are you sending council about what you hope they send the voters?
Can you give us a suggestion of how it might be worded?
You can make a motion to leave the number of P and Z members as it is in the charter.
Second.
There's been a motion made by Moore and seconded by Jackson, Doc Jackson. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it unanimously. All right.
So that would be 12, right?
Right. Now then, amendment we have to consider that was tabled, and it was tabled last time by a vote of 11-0, and that is to amend section 3.07 of the charter to compensate the mayor at a rate of blank dollars per month and council members at a rate of blank dollars per month. And we'll be filling in, we need to fill in those blanks. But this is the issue. Do we compensate the mayor and council for what they do as mayor and council? Your hand went up first.
This is a question for Alan, and it will reveal my ability to be confused even more. I know you wrote us a note about this, is it possible to put in the charter that no one serving on the council at the time this passes can benefit from an increase?
Yes.
Thank you.
And to remind everyone, last time I was stating from memory that incumbents would not benefit from a pay increase. That only applies to general law cities. I double-checked that afterwards. So if there is no state law limitation on the compensation for council members and mayors in home rule cities, whether the compensation is set by the voters through a charter or set by the city council by ordinance. So if there is a limitation on the compensation for mayors and council members, it is imposed locally. So you could impose a limitation through the charter by recommending that to council and the voters. If they approve it, then that is the limitation. You could approve a large compensation figure for the city council, and the voters approve that large compensation figure, and the council comes back later and says, no, by ordinance, we're going to lower that. We're not going to take that much. So if there is a limitation, it's a locally adopted limitation, not a state law limitation.
So my reason for asking that question is I don't want the council to be in the position of not recommending something for future mayors and council members because they don't want anybody to think they're trying to feather their own nest. And so if we can get that in there, I think that's really important. And I'm in favor of trying to figure out some figure. I wish we could do it other than having to set it every time we pass a charter change. But I think we need to put that other element in there that Alan mentioned to protect this current city council.
Could I ask for some clarification on what we're trying to do here? Because whoever prepared this chart is very, very nice, very helpful. There obviously is one city, San Marcos, I assume, which is viewing this as actually a sort of part-time salary for being on the council or mayor. The others appear to be more compensating for expenses incurred so that being on the city council or being mayor doesn't actually cause you to lose money. Which approach are y'all looking at discussing here? Are we talking about creating a part-time salary, or are we looking at just compensating expenses?
David, could I speak? I think there is an answer, Ken, to your suggestion that you wish there was some way we could avoid having to meet the charter review every few years to determine this. That's a completely inappropriate way, in my judgment, to set compensation, if any. And so I think the appropriate way to do this is to, I like your idea of putting a limit on we could, for example, I'm going to make a motion that we allow the council to set their own compensation, if any, with the caveat that they would not benefit them during their term of office. It would only be effective after some reelection. And I think it's silly for us to meet every few years and try to debate ad nauseum some compensation for what I think everybody agrees is a part-time job and should have a part-time salary. Let them set their own salary with that one caveat, and I'd so move.
Mr. Crouch.
I've, in the city of Taylor is on this chart that everyone has, and it's inaccurate based on what they just passed recently. So the city of Taylor formed a citizen committee to, because I'll step back real quick. The council passed themselves a raise to $500 per meeting and $750 per meeting for the mayor last year. The citizens were upset and angry that they passed, because they were getting $25 the way this chart shows, per meeting, not per month. And so the city passed themselves a raise, the citizens got upset. The council formed a citizen committee to research what they wanted to pay the council members, and they changed it from $25 a meeting to $125 per meeting, is what the citizen committee came out to, which, if you're meeting twice a month, it would be $250 per month. If you do it per meeting, then it would be $125 per meeting. And I think that the citizens of Bastrop would be somewhere in that range too, to where you're not losing money to come to a council meeting, and you get some benefit out of being city council. You're not going to make a living on $125 a meeting. So I would propose that we kind of follow the city's citizens of Taylor and what they were saying, and with $125 a meeting. Now, how we define those meetings, because there's so many special meetings and other things, maybe you do it per regular council meeting, there's 2 council meetings a month, and it's $250 per month. Maybe that's something that we could think about anyway.
I believe Mr. Tuck has a motion on the floor. Was there a second to that motion?
I didn't hear one.
I have a question, though, since there's no motion, unless somebody's going to make one. If they are, I will hold
Well,
on.
I had a question too, but go ahead, Ken.
But Joe, I was going to say, did you, and obviously you didn't get a second, but did you intend in your thought process that we would talk about what we did with the people that passed it couldn't benefit
Yes.
from it until they're reelected?
Yes,
And then the citizens can throw them out if they didn't like it?
correct.
Okay. All right, just want to make sure. I didn't hear that, but
Well,
I
let
may
me,
have
let me
missed it.
ask you, you've served with council for many years and, as mayor and otherwise as a council member. What do you think? I'd like to hear your opinion, about letting the council set their own remuneration, if any, with that caveat.
Well, let me let Jimmy. Jimmy's been thinking about this, and I haven't.
I think it puts council in an awkward position to set their own. And then I think you end up with the same situation that the city of Taylor was in. So they all came together, there was 4 and a mayor, and set their salary or set their pay, and the citizens didn't like it. And it wasn't absorbent, it was $500 per meeting, which could be, depending on however many meetings you have, it could be substantial. So it failed, they removed it, the citizens formed a committee, or the council formed a citizens committee, and that's what they came up with, was $125. So they lowered it substantially. I think the first one was a 4,000% increase from what they had previously, so.
And I would mention what I did at the last meeting, even if you say it's not for us, it's for the next people, that doesn't make the headline. The headline is council votes themselves a 4,000% increase. And so it's just completely awkward for council to be doing it.
So would it be equally awkward for them to propose an increase? I mean, propose that the voters vote on an increase?
Well, that, I actually am in agreement with Jimmy, that the 125-ish is a good idea, but I would say special meetings, and then you'll get into, you just called a special meeting because you want to get another $125. So, and also for the folks in accounting, I think it is so much easier. You get this per month. So I think it might just be kind of cleaner all the way around for budgeting purposes and for clarity of compensation, to just say, and maybe, is it $250 per month for council and, $400 for the mayor, or it can just be $250 for every council member. But the reason I believe in the past that the mayor got a little bit more was because they're generally doing more things outside of council. But I don't believe, and I think we talked about it at the last meeting, we're not trying to give somebody a part-time job. It's not going to be $16,000. So whether it's $75 or $250 if I was quicker at math, maybe $250 is the same as $75 20 years ago when it was set. It's just intended to kind of cover your gas, and I had made the comment that it wasn't covering the dry cleaning when I was mayor, but so if it could just be a little bit, I think that would be helpful. But I think it's cleaner, and it's not going to be reviewed longer than 6 years, and it has the potential of being reviewed every 2 years, but it hasn't been changed in 20 years. So it just feels like it's time for a change.
Oh.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes, it's kind of hard to get the chair's attention since I'm not sitting next to you like I was last time, but I'll try to speak. I think per month, I agree with the mayor and what Jimmy was saying, $250 a month and then maybe $400 or so for that. We didn't put down the city of Elgin, and that's what they are doing right now. They're doing $250 for their council, but I think they're doing $500 for the mayor. But anyway, $400 would work for us, I think, something like that. But now they're in the process of even changing that because it's not suitable. But I think, and they have 9 council members, by the way, including the mayor. That's another monopoly that they have. And they're they're home rule like us. So I would think that we could do the $250. We could recommend $250 for the council, $400 or whatever the committee decides on, and pass that on to the council as a recommendation.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion if you want it to be one, yes.
Doc Jackson moves that we amend section 3.07 of the charter to compensate the mayor at a rate of $400 per month and council members at a rate of $250 per month. And further, that any person
Currently on the council will not be able to receive that. It's just for after the election, those people that follow. I mean, as like Alan said earlier, we can work that wording out later, I think.
Unless they're reelected, correct?
Yeah, right, any re-election.
After an election, yes.
Just to clarify.
An election of that person.
So any person
I second that.
on the council voting for the increase or whatever cannot benefit.
because they'll vote citizens, right?
That's true.
So anybody on the council now will have to, if they are reelected, if they're eligible, would be able to benefit from the compensation after the voters have a chance to kick them out. That's.
They voted in, yes.
Yeah, they have to be voted back in. Would you consider maybe tagging it to the cost of living increase that Social Security comes up with every year?
That'd be hard to do, but there was a second way.
Would be hard because of what? It doesn't stop my Social Security Commission from increasing my Social Security.
Who's going to make that decision?
Well, you look it up on the internet and you tag it into the compensation for the next year.
Yeah, it's a published number.
Mr. Chairman, I think that needs to be proposed as an amendment, correct, to this motion, and then we'd vote on the amendment and then the motion? Is that how?
I was just testing that with Doc since he made the motion. I don't think I got very far, so I'll probably just keep talking
I'd
now.
heard a second trying to be made when you were trying to talk to me, so I was listening more to getting a second so we could discuss it.
All right, so there is a second to Doc's motion.
Mr. Crouch.
Okay, Jim. All right. $250 for the council, $400 for the mayor.
Yeah, I don't want to say as a former mayor and former council member, it's not so much about the money as it is, we live in a money-driven culture. And, just to say, this is a little way for us to say thanks. And so I think that's a whole lot more to the point than anything else. And also to say that, as Connie said, what was $75 worth 24 years ago?
Mr. Chairman, I would say that on the one hand, it's not shouldn't be about the money. On the other hand, it does limit the pool of people who will be able to run for this office, because the reality is that if you think about the amount of time that that the city council requires of the council members and of the mayor, and if you think about the amount of time it's going to require, which I think will be infinitely more over the coming years because of the growth of the city and the challenges that we face, and to I can't remember who said it, but to somebody's point about the fact that oftentimes these council meetings, when we now have so many folks who want to make certain that they make their voices known, drag on for hours and hours. You got people who are going to have to be independently supported. This is going to take away from their ability to earn a living if they and do things outside of this. And so we're limiting the possible pool of potential city council members and mayors by not compensating this thing more than we're proposing to do at this point.
It's more of an honorarium than anything else. And remember, when I started out, it was just $30, so.
You stayed on anyway.
I stayed on anyway, yes.
Any more discussion?
Call for the question.
The motion is amend section 3.07 of the charter to compensate the mayor at a rate of $400 per month and council members at the rate of $250 per month. Any person on the council at the time this is enacted cannot benefit until the next election or re-election.
Can we clarify that? To say until that person is reelected? Because the next election could be an off for somebody else.
Alan?
Mr. Chairman, Commission, I looked at some other language we use elsewhere on the charter. Maybe we could use this line. Sitting council members at the time of a compensation increase shall be ineligible to receive the additional funds.
You like that, Doc?
Period, or?
So just to clarify, does that mean that if we have rolling elections, then some folks will be getting the compensation on the dais and others will not?
Correct. Until you've made it all the way through. It'll take 3 years.
It does seem like a little further clarification could be helpful until they are reelected.
So what is the,
Well, I think if the citizens vote on it, I mean, you know, after the next election, could be the next election, that if it's passed, that the citizens will have spoken, and I think that would work, but I mean, I'll go along with what we have, because we have a consensus, I think, pretty much on that.
By saying that it's not for the people that are voting on it, it may more likely pass and go to the citizens, because we would be putting the current council in a position of they're putting forward a raise for themselves. So that the idea of, and maybe we just say that the raise doesn't go into effect and we set a certain date and time certain, and then that clears it up and everybody's compensation goes up at a certain time. That would be another way to do it. Otherwise, it'll take 3 years for each position to have cycled through.
Well, I don't mind that. What I'd want to do is I want the citizens to have a chance to say, you shouldn't have done it. And I'm not going to vote for you because of that. And I want it to not kick in until that person has run the gauntlet with the voters.
So you're wanting to leave it as, until you're reelected?
However Alan can, yeah, that's what
That's your intention?
well,
I think I had called for the question.
And what's in your motion? Which way do you have it in your motion?
We were just clarifying.
What
Well,
was
it got a little muddy there, but I mean, we had a motion on the floor, and Alan had clarified it, so, by adding that additional language, and so I thought we were settled, but if we're gonna still be discussing it,
You're right.
after call for the question, and after we've discussed it, I think it's being forced to death.
Alan, can you read again your suggested language?
As modified by Mr. Henley, it reads, sitting council members at the time of a compensation increase shall be ineligible to receive the additional funds until reelected.
Everybody understand the motion?
Yes.
That's clear.
Let's take a vote then. All in favor of amending section 3.07 as stated, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. Passes unanimously.
The horse.
That horse is
That horse is so dead.
Yeah, that $400 isn't going to cover the court costs.
Let me suggest that we go ahead and take a break right now. That completes everything on my list. But y'all may have other things you want to add that we need to discuss. And so let's take a 15-minute break and then we'll reconvene.
Mr. Chairman, if anybody, if there is nothing else to discuss, then that break would be an adjournment. Could we figure out if we have
Is there
anything else?
Does anyone want to add anything to our agenda that we have not discussed?
Yeah, I have a question. I thought, I hate to admit I don't have the minutes in front of me. Didn't we table 2 things last time? Am I wrong about that?
I only saw one.
Okay, then I'm wrong. I'm ready to go home.
Yeah, me too.
Is there a motion to adjourn then? Is there a second? There's a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you all very much.
for being a great
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, David.